Hello. Want to give a quick look at how to save documents from Word. Someone recently asked about how you would save documents, and when you save a document, whether it's from Excel or from Word, PowerPoint, access is a little different. Then you typically want to save into a folder that you've already created for it. And when students run into problems with how to save files and how to get files back, the problems that they have with it are generally two parts. That the first part is that they do not name the files in a logical fashion. I do not want in this paper that I wrote my title that's going to be saved as to be the beginning of the first sentence. Since the 1840s, distance education, this is probably going to end up being my title here. And this is not what I want as my title, because I've written a lot of papers on distance education, and I don't want to be picking out frames of it. So instead, I want to have it named, and I want to have it name something that I can actually understand. The other thing is that people aren't always aware where they save it. So when I'm saving this document, this was a paper that I wrote for my Adult Education Technologies program back in 2011. You go to File, and it brings up documents that I've recently done. 4 of them have been from school documents I was working with, and 1 was from a manga document that I was doing. I think it's sizable bookmarks. So if I want to save this document, for the first time, I recommend people go to Save As. Now in this case, when I'm looking and I go to the Browse button, right, I can save it to the PC, and then in my PC go through everything. I can save it to OneDrive, which I basically never use. Or I can browse for the location, and here I have 3 different documents that have been saved in this location. This document location is part of a larger archive where I've been creating folders. Inside of this archive, I have a UOP folder that happens to be, because I went to University of Phoenix, and if I double click in there, it will come up with the various courses. These are all the courses and papers that I've written in 5 years. And so I have saved them all. So if I want to go to my course 531, which was a course on coaching, these are the files that are here. Now I have Excel documents and I have Adobe Photoshop documents that are inside. However, they do not show up because currently I have it set up I only want to pull up Word documents. If I was going to try to pull up everything, I would have to go out to the main browser. And in my file structure tree, which I'll do a separate video on, that's how I would then organize those files. But let's say that in here, I wanted to create a folder. I would do a right click and go down to New and create a folder and call that folder Temporary. I can create the folder right where it is, and then I double click on that and I can come in and name it. I strongly suggest that people either name things with a version number so that every time I pull up a document I can save it new. And in this case, I'm going to save first version 2. And then if we pretend that I did some sort of work on this, so I'm going to go back to the browse, and in here I want to now do version 3. This way, I always have, when I save it, I always have a record of the documents that I've had. Now, when I'm inside a session, I don't necessarily need that. I'm not going to save this 20 different times inside of one time I sit down to work on it. But there have been times in the past, particularly with some of the longer documents, that if I'm doing 10,000 words, then I've added in a section and I realize I don't want that section. I'm going to have to remove it, or I'm going to put in somebody else's work, particularly in group assignments. And so going backwards in the version history can be very useful, particularly if maybe there was something in version 2 that I had, and then in doing version 3 I accidentally deleted that part. I can go back into a document, I can cut and paste it into other documents. Some people prefer not to do the version number, and they prefer to put in the date. I typically will put in a version number, or sometimes I'll put in a date, but usually I'll do eFundamentals version 1 or eFundamentals 1, because the date is already here, so I can go find the latest date. I usually try to help students be able to name files so that they can understand what that file was about. Because this was an educational technologies course, I know that eFundamentals has to do with e-learning. In fact, this is a short history of e-learning as it was originally conceived, and that was based on mail-in schools, which predate all the way back to the 1840s. So this idea that we're operating in a new environment because we're not in a school in person, well, I guess it depends what you consider a new environment. I don't usually consider the 1800s that new. Now, once I'm actually writing inside of the document, so I'm going to go backwards into my document here, and I'm going to come in, and there happens to be some errors I see. So I'm going to delete this extra space that I have here. And in that space, I now want to not lose that work. So above the insert button and the home button, there's a small save button. The other thing that comes up is if you hover your mouse over it, just like you'll see on the screen, it will show Control S, and Control S will save it. At that point, it's taken whatever the path that I first written on, which in this case went to the archive that I set up, and it's taken that line and it's saved now over that line. So now when I go back, if I was to open the document, and I'm going to open up from the line, I would probably open up usually from here, but I would open up version 3 of the temporary and click on open. And even though this was an old document that I saved, it retains the current correction in it because I set a path and then saved and did a quick save, Control S, directly over that path. For students who are new to the Windows environment, I would strongly suggest turning on autosave. I typically keep autosave off, simply because at the time that I write a paragraph, then I'm going to have a Control S and do a quick save onto this document. Now, sometimes people forget where they put things. In Office 360, somewhere over your Layout or References button, you'll have a pull-down window that typically is the title, and then it will say the type of document. In this case, it's a DOCX, or Word document extended, and it'll say where it's been saved to. And in this case, it will bring up in light gray here the version number and the location that it's been saved to. And then I can upload this document if I want up into OneDrive. Now, let's say that in this particular part, I've saved this document and now I'm going to need another version. I'm going to need a version 4. Because even though I got 100 on this paper, if I click Grammarly up here, we'll see that there's actually quite a few problems on it. To save us from having to go through it, because some of these are problems that are actual issues, and some of them are not. Some of them are word choice issues, for instance, on principal. This is not actually correct. There's 4 principal methods. It gets a little confused sometimes in scientific terminology, and so I'm not going to change that. So I'm going to go, and for the ease of use, I've already corrected it, and I have a Fundamentals version 2 corrected. So in this one, I've corrected all of those errors. Now Grammarly will still find things. It reduced 40 to 4, however. So it was quite a, I think, 26 total, correct, 40 issues total, and now I just have 4 issues that it doesn't like, but it will have to continue not liking them because they're actually correct. When you get a grammar program, there's free ones out there. I happen to use a paid one. Just be aware that they're not going to be capable of doing everything. You're still going to need to know enough to be able to make decisions on whether or not to use it. I do quite a bit of writing, and so it's easy for me to do Grammarly and help check my work. I'm going to save this document. I want to save it in the temporary folder and not where I pulled it from, which is in a different archive here. I pulled it from the ResearchCat archive for my channel. So what I'm going to do is go backwards here to the archive, and then I'm going to go down to UOP. We were working in 531 and temporary. Then I would save this, but I don't want to save this as version 2 corrected because I have a version 3 here. So this is actually now version 3 corrected. And then save. For students, I would recommend that when you set up your document, your ribbon may look a little different depending upon how you customized it. That would have to be a different video. I have both EndNote and Grammarly, both of which have their own videos on this channel. But you want to save it something that you understand. If you're working on a shared drive, then I would suggest that you name it with your name. The camera share screen app is causing a few issues. Put an underscore in there so it's very easy to read. So now I have my name and then whatever the title version is. And keep track of your versions. The other thing to do is be aware that inside of the program, by right-clicking, you can navigate and you can create new folders to organize your work and set it up. So now I've created a new folder inside of a temporary folder inside of this folder. In this case, I'm going to delete, I have it open, of course, in Word, and I guess we'll do this quickly here. In Word, you cannot delete a document that is currently open in the workplace. And I should also add, because students get confused in it, you cannot mail a document through Outlook that is open on your desktop. So if you've put something out onto your Word, and I'm going to take that document and now I'm going to email it to someone, I have to close the document and then I can delete this. So in this case, what I will do is after this video ends, I'm going to open this archive up and delete this because I already have them saved somewhere else. I don't need duplicates. Thank you, and I hope that this was helpful.